How three friends uncovered a shocking secret and rediscovered their true selves. What if the laughter you bring to others hides your own pain? Can you ever escape the role you were forced to play? Ragatha, the whimsical doll with porcelain skin and vibrant stitched-together clothes, had always been the heart of the amazing digital circus. With her infectious laughter and bright smile, she brought joy to every performance, captivating audiences both in the ring and online. But beneath her cheerful exterior, Ragatha carried a heavy burden, a truth she could hardly bear. Despite the accolades and the applause, she often felt like a marionette, strings attached to her every movement. The laughter of the audience rang hollow in her ears as she twisted and spun for their amusement. The more she performed, the more she felt her true self slipping away. Who was Ragatha when the curtains closed? The question haunted her, casting a shadow over the vibrant life she led in the digital realm. The circus was dazzling, a spectacle of lights and sounds, filled with characters that made life seem like an endless celebration. But the more Ragatha smiled, the more she felt her own identity fading into the background. She longed for something more, something real. One evening, after another thrilling show, Ragatha found herself backstage, alone in the dimly lit corridors of the circus. The laughter of the audience faded, leaving an uncomfortable silence. She wandered through the labyrinth of props and costumes, her heart heavy with the weight of her unspoken truth. As she turned a corner, she stumbled upon Kinger, the anxious king whose paranoia often made him a comical figure in the circus. He was pacing back and forth, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap out from the shadows. "Hey, Kinger!" Ragatha called out, forcing a smile despite the turmoil within her. "What's got you so worked up?" Kinger stopped and turned to her, his expression a mixture of fear and relief. "Ragatha, you have to listen to me. I've been noticing things, glitches, like something's wrong with the circus. The colors, the sounds, it's like the whole place is falling apart." Ragatha's heart raced. She had noticed the glitches too, but had pushed them aside in her pursuit of joy. "I thought it was just part of the digital world. You know how things can get glitchy." "But it's more than that," Kinger insisted, his voice shaky. "What if we're trapped? What if the circus isn't just a show, but something darker? What if we're not really who we think we are?" His words struck a chord deep within Ragatha. She had felt that something was off, that there was more to their existence than endless performances. She glanced around, ensuring no one else was listening. "What do you mean? Do you think there's a way out?" Kinger nodded fervently, his eyes wide. "I think we need to find out what lies beyond the circus. We can't keep living this lie, Ragatha. I don't want to be just a character in someone else's story anymore." Ragatha's heart raced. Could they really escape? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. But then she looked at Kinger, the fear in his eyes mirroring her own. Maybe it was time to confront the truth, to peel back the layers of the performance and discover who they truly were. The next day, Ragatha and Kinger began to dig deeper into the mysteries of the circus. They wandered through the various performances, speaking to their fellow characters. Zubal, the shifting figure whose form often reflected their moods, joined them in their quest. Each conversation revealed the same unsettling pattern. Everyone felt something was wrong, but no one knew what to do about it. The trio gathered in a hidden corner of the circus, away from the prying eyes of the ringmaster. "We need to uncover the secrets of this place," Ragatha said, her voice resolute. "There has to be a way to break free from these roles." As they planned their next steps, the glitches became more frequent. The vibrant colors of the circus would flicker and fade, the joyful sounds warping into static. Each time it happened, Ragatha felt a pang of fear mixed with excitement. Maybe this was the push they needed. One evening, while the audience was engaged in a thrilling performance, Ragatha led Kinger and Zubal to the heart of the circus. an area rarely accessed by anyone but the ringmaster. The air was thick with anticipation as they entered the grand tent, the colors swirling around them in a dizzying array. As they made their way inside, they stumbled upon a hidden door behind the main stage, covered in shadows. It felt out of place, a stark contrast to the colorful chaos of the circus outside. The three exchanged glances, each one silently agreeing to face whatever lay beyond. Regatha pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit corridor that led deeper into the circus. The atmosphere shifted, becoming heavy and electric. They stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind them. "What do you think is down here?" Kinger asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Only one way to find out," Regatha replied, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The corridor twisted and turned, leading them to a large room filled with screens and machines, all flickering and buzzing. At the center stood the ringmaster, his back turned to them as he manipulated the controls of the circus with deft fingers. "Welcome, my dear performers," he said without turning around. "I've been expecting you." The trio froze, uncertainty flooding their minds. Regatha felt a surge of anger. "What have you done to us? Why are we trapped here?" The ringmaster finally turned, his smile wide and unsettling. "You're not trapped. You're performing. You've always been performers, and I've given you a life of endless joy. But you want to know the truth, don't you? You want to know what lies beyond the glittering facade of the circus?" Regatha clenched her fists, refusing to back down. "Yes, we want the truth. We deserve to know who we are, not just what you made us." The ringmaster chuckled, a sinister sound that echoed through the room. "Very well, then. If you think you can handle it, let's pull back the curtain." With a flick of his wrist, the screens around them lit up, revealing flashes of their pasts, images of their lives before the circus. Regatha gasped as she saw a glimpse of herself, a young girl, living a life filled with dreams, hopes, and creativity. But the images quickly faded, replaced by the stark reality of their current existence. "You see, you were all brought here for a purpose," the ringmaster said, his voice dripping with amusement. "To entertain, to bring joy to others while forgetting your own lives. The circus is a perfect escape, a world where pain and suffering can't reach you. But it's also a prison." Regatha felt the ground shift beneath her. "No, we won't accept this. We deserve more than to be pawns in your game." Kinger stepped forward, his voice steady. "You don't own us. We're not your creations. We're real. And we're taking back our lives." The ringmaster's smile faltered for the first time. "You think you can just walk away? This is all you know." But Regatha could feel the power within her growing. The knowledge of who she was before the circus gave her strength. "No, this is not who we are. We're not just characters. We're individuals with our own stories. And we won't let you keep us here any longer." The trio took a step back, determination shining in their eyes. They had to break the illusion that bound them to the circus. With a united front, they focused on the glowing crack in the wall, the portal to their true selves. As they concentrated, the air around them began to shimmer, the illusion of the circus flickering like a candle in the wind. The ringmaster's face twisted in rage as he realized they were breaking free. "No, you will stay. You will perform." But it was too late. The crack widened, engulfing them in light. They felt themselves being pulled into the unknown, the circus collapsing around them, the laughter and applause fading into silence. When Regatha opened her eyes again, she was lying on soft grass under a clear blue sky. The air felt different, fresh and invigorating. She blinked, taking in the familiar sights of the real world. Sunlight poured down, warming her skin as she sat up, realizing she was free. Kinger and Zubul sat beside her, their faces filled with awe. "We made it," Kinger whispered, a smile breaking across his face. We're really free. Ragatha looked around, her heart soaring. They were no longer trapped in the digital circus. They were themselves again, free to explore the world and find their true identities. With a newfound sense of purpose, Ragatha stood up and took a deep breath. "Let's create our own story now," she declared, her voice strong and clear. "No more pretending. We can be whoever we want to be." And as they ventured into the real world together, Ragatha knew that the laughter they would share would be genuine, coming from a place of authenticity. They were free to embrace their pasts, their present, and whatever the future held. The Conductor's Symphony of Shadows. One afternoon, Kane announced a new experience for the group. "Gather round, my friends. Today you'll step into the Conductor's Symphony of Shadows. Embrace the music, for it will guide you through the darkness." As they entered the dimly lit space, they were surrounded by swirling shadows and haunting melodies. A ghostly figure, dressed as a conductor, appeared before them, his baton raised. "Welcome to my symphony," he announced, his voice echoing like a distant whisper. "To leave, you must play the music of your hearts. But beware! The shadows listen and will try to steal your light." Pomni felt a chill run down her spine. What does he mean by stealing our light? Suddenly, the shadows around them began to writhe and pulse, growing more menacing. "You must perform for me," the conductor commanded. "Show me the light in your hearts, and let the music guide you." The shadows closed in, their whispers growing louder, echoing doubts and fears. Pomni glanced around at her friends, each of them standing tense and unsure. "We can do this together," she said, trying to sound brave. As they stood in the center of the stage, the conductor waved his baton, and the music began to swell. They could feel the rhythm pulsing in their veins, urging them to move. Ragatha took a deep breath and stepped forward, spinning and dancing to the haunting melody. Jax followed suit, adding his own flair with acrobatic flips. A mischievous smile plastered across his face. "Come on, Gangle. Let's show these shadows how it's done." Gangle hesitated, her mask hiding her emotions. "What if they take me?" she whispered. "You're stronger than you think," Pomni encouraged. "Just let the music move you." With a tentative step, Gangle joined in, her movements gradually growing bolder. The shadows writhed around them, trying to tug at their light. But the more they performed, the brighter they glowed. Pomni felt the warmth of their friendship surge through her. "Together!" she shouted, leading them into a synchronized dance, their shadows intertwining with the melody. Suddenly, the shadows began to retreat, hissing in frustration as the music swelled. The conductor's smile widened, and he raised his baton higher, as if to amplify their performance. With each note, their confidence grew, and they poured their hearts into the dance. The shadows seemed to lose their power, flickering like a fading flame. Just when it seemed they had triumphed, a darker shadow loomed over them, swirling with an oppressive force. "You cannot escape. Your light belongs to me," it screeched. The conductor stepped forward, raising his baton with determination. "Not today. Your time has passed." With a final flourish, he struck down the baton, and a wave of radiant light erupted from the performers. The dark shadow shrieked, dissipating into nothingness as the melody reached its climax. As the music faded, the conductor bowed deeply, gratitude shining in his ghostly eyes. "You have proven your strength and unity. Your light is unmatched. You are free to go." As they left the symphony, their hearts still racing, Pomni turned to her friends. "That was incredible. We really shone together." Jax grinned. "Yeah, who knew we could outshine the darkness?" With newfound confidence, they walked back into the circus, ready for whatever bizarre adventure awaited them next. How one clown's courage transformed the amazing digital circus forever. What if the greatest show on Earth hid the darkest secrets behind its bright lights? Can one character find the courage to uncover the truth and break free from the chains of their digital existence? In the whimsical, yet eerie realm of the amazing digital circus, a place where vibrant colors and enchanting characters thrived, Jax, a seemingly cheerful clown with floppy shoes and a painted smile, found himself struggling to keep up the facade of joy. The circus was known for its wild performances, filled with laughter and awe, but Jax carried a weight on his shoulders that made him feel like an imposter in his own life. Every day, the circus opened its doors to a cheering crowd, captivated by the dazzling performances of characters like Pomni, the bold and spirited ringmaster, and Kinger, the wise but whimsical jester. Jax was expected to entertain, to bring joy to the audience, yet he often felt lost in the chaos. Beneath his painted smile lay a sense of longing for something more, something real. As the shows continued, Jax became increasingly aware of the undercurrents of tension within the circus. Whispers echoed backstage about the ringmaster, a mysterious figure who controlled everything with an iron fist. The other performers feared him, for he had the power to erase anyone who didn't meet his expectations. The bright lights of the circus masked a darker reality, one that Jax couldn't ignore any longer. One fateful evening, after a particularly exhilarating show, Jax overheard a conversation between two performers. They spoke of a hidden place within the circus, a secret chamber where the ringmaster kept a collection of discarded dreams and lost talents. He collects them like trophies, one performer whispered, shivering at the thought. Those who fail to impress him are never seen again. Jax's heart raced. The thought of being trapped in this digital existence haunted him. He felt a surge of determination and decided to uncover the truth behind the ringmaster's power. With the help of his friends, he began to investigate. They discovered a series of hidden corridors leading deep into the circus, each one darker than the last. As they ventured further, Jax realized that he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for all the characters who felt trapped in this dazzling yet deceptive world. He needed to confront the ringmaster and break the cycle of fear that gripped them all. The day of reckoning arrived, and Jax gathered his friends in front of the ringmaster's chamber. "We can't live in fear any longer," he declared, his voice steady. "We deserve to chase our own dreams, not just entertain others." Together, they confronted the ringmaster, whose presence loomed large and intimidating. "You think you can defy me?" he sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "You're nothing without me. I made you who you are." But Jax stood firm. "No, you only made us shadows of ourselves. We've hidden our true selves for too long. We won't be afraid anymore." In that moment, something shifted. The energy in the room crackled with defiance, igniting a fire in the hearts of the performers. Jax's courage inspired others to step forward, revealing their true identities and desires. The once dim room transformed into a vibrant space filled with colors, laughter, and a sense of unity. The ringmaster's facade began to crack as he faced the uprising of the very characters he had tried to control. "You think you can take away my power?" he roared, but his voice wavered. With newfound strength, Jax and his friends combined their talents and creativity, forming a dazzling display that illuminated the chamber. They unleashed a whirlwind of colors and sounds, showcasing their individuality and passion. The ringmaster's grip weakened as the magic of their true selves filled the room, overpowering his darkness. In that moment, Jax realized that their strength lay not in conformity, but in embracing their differences. Each performer had a unique story, a spark of creativity that added to the richness of the circus. They were not just entertainers, they were artists, dreamers, and creators. With a final burst of energy, Jax and his friends pushed back against the ringmaster's power, breaking the chains that had held them captive for so long. The once feared figure was reduced to a shadow, a mere reflection of the fear he had instilled in others. As the dust settled, the circus transformed into a place of true joy and creativity. The characters no longer felt bound by expectations. They embraced their individuality and explored new artistic paths. The audience was no longer just spectators. They became participants in a vibrant celebration of creativity and self-expression. Jack stood at the center of the transformed circus, his heart swelling with pride. He had discovered the truth behind the dazzling lights, the magic of being true to oneself, and the power of friendship and unity. The amazing digital circus was no longer just a show. It was a living, breathing tapestry of dreams, hopes, and authenticity. As the stars twinkled above, Jax looked around at his friends, now shining in their unique brilliance. They had not only defeated the ringmaster, but had also embraced the beauty of their own stories. The circus would continue to dazzle and inspire, but now it would do so with the promise of freedom and creativity. In a world where fear tries to silence you, remember, true magic happens when you embrace who you really are and support others in their journey. Jax's endless loop. One fine day, Jax, the cynical and sly jackrabbit, found himself pacing around the lobby of the digital circus. Bored out of his mind and tired of the endless antics of the others, he decided to stir things up a bit, his specialty. Jax wandered past Pomni, who was intensely focused on a puzzle cube, likely trying to solve yet another weird task from Kane, the ever-enthusiastic ringmaster. With his mischievous grin widening, Jax snatched the puzzle from her hands and darted off. "Jax!" Pomni yelled, but he was already sprinting away, his laugh echoing throughout the strange circus. Her frustration quickly turned to resolve, and she gave chase. Ragatha, who had been lounging nearby, noticed the commotion and sighed. "Here we go again," she muttered, before casually joining the chase. The chase led them into an unfamiliar section of the digital circus, somewhere none of them had explored before. It was a dimly lit hallway with an unsettlingly long row of identical doors on either side. Jack skidded to a halt, his amusement waning as he looked around. "This doesn't look right," he muttered to himself, his usual bravado faltering for a moment. Pomni, not far behind, caught up and paused, her eyes scanning the strange surroundings. The air in this part of the circus felt heavier, almost distorted. Jax shrugged it off. "Whatever," he said, pushing open a door on the left. The second he stepped through, however, he found himself back in the same hallway, facing Pomni and Ragatha again. "What the—" Jax blinked. He had just walked through that door, hadn't he? Confused but determined not to show it, he pushed open another door, only to find himself back in the same hallway once again. Pomni was watching with growing concern, Ragatha looking equally uneasy. "Jax, I don't think this place is normal," Pomni said, her voice trembling slightly. Jax, never one to back down from a challenge, laughed it off, but there was an edge to it now. "Just a glitch or something. No big deal," he said, heading for a third door. But no matter how many doors he opened, each one led him back to the hallway. His confidence began to wane, and a strange feeling of dread crept up his spine. Ragatha stepped forward, reaching for his arm. "Jax, let's go back. This place isn't right." But Jax shook her off, frustration bubbling up. "I'm not scared of a stupid hallway." He kicked open another door, but this time, the hallway began to shift. The walls stretched, distorting into impossible angles. The floor seemed to twist beneath them, making it hard to stand. Pomni gasped, clutching Ragatha's arm. "We have to get out of here." Jax tried to step forward, but the ground beneath him warped, causing him to stumble. The once straight hallway now felt like an endless spiral, twisting and pulling them deeper into its center. The three of them scrambled to find a way out, but the doors were no longer where they had been. Instead, they floated in the air, shifting position as if mocking them. Jax, who had been so confident and cocky moments before, was now desperately searching for an escape. "I didn't sign up for this!" he shouted, his voice echoing unnaturally in the warped space. Suddenly, the floor gave way, and they all tumbled into a strange void. For a brief moment, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of their panicked breathing. Then, with a flash of light, they landed back in the main lobby of the digital circus, as if nothing had happened. Jax lay on the floor, panting, his fur matted with sweat. Pomni and Regatha were beside him, equally shaken. "Well, that was something," Jax muttered, trying to regain his composure. He forced a smirk, but the tremor in his voice gave him away. Pomni shot him a glare. "Next time, don't steal my stuff." Jax chuckled weakly, getting to his feet. Yeah. Lesson learned. Maybe." As they walked away, Regatha glanced back at the hallway they had just escaped. The doors were all closed now, looking perfectly normal. But she had a feeling that whatever lay behind them wasn't done with them yet. The pixelated storm. One day, without warning, a massive storm rolled into the amazing digital circus. But this wasn't just any storm. It was pixelated, with jagged edges and glitchy clouds. The sky turned from bright blue to a garbled mess of corrupted code, and Kane, always eager to turn chaos into entertainment, immediately saw an opportunity. "Today's event," he announced, "survive the pixelated storm. The rules are simple. Don't get caught by the glitches." The storm started with a low rumble, and pieces of the circus world began to distort and disappear, as if the storm were eating away at reality itself. Regatha grabbed Pomni's hand. "We need to stick together." Kinger, however, didn't seem fazed. "Oh, I love storms. I'll just ride it out in my tower," he said cheerfully, marching off toward his favorite hangout spot. Jax, ever the sarcastic one, grinned. "I bet I can outrun it." The group split up, each trying to figure out the best way to avoid the storm's unpredictable glitches. As the storm intensified, entire chunks of the landscape vanished, replaced by a sea of swirling code. Regatha and Pomni found themselves trapped on a floating island of digital debris, while Jax hopped effortlessly across glitchy gaps in the ground, laughing at the chaos. Kinger, in his tower, was oblivious to the danger until his tower began to pixelate and collapse beneath him. "Oh dear!" he exclaimed, flailing as the storm pulled him into its swirling vortex. Meanwhile, Pomni and Regatha were struggling to stay afloat as the storm closed in on them. "We have to find a way out of here," Regatha shouted over the howling winds. At that moment, Kane's voice boomed through the storm. "Ah, it seems the storm is a bit more intense than I expected. But don't worry, my little performers. I'll be watching closely to see how you handle it." Jax, still managing to dodge the worst of the storm, spotted Kinger spiraling out of control and launched himself toward him. "Hold on, Kinger," he shouted, grabbing his arm just in time. Together, they managed to land on a patch of solid ground. But the storm was relentless. Back on their floating island, Pomni noticed a control panel hidden beneath the debris. "Maybe this can shut down the storm," she exclaimed. With Ragatha's help, she managed to activate the panel, and slowly but surely, the storm began to dissipate. The pixelated clouds cleared, and the circus world returned to normal, though a few areas still flickered with leftover glitches. Kane, ever the showman, reappeared. "Well done! You've survived the pixelated storm. I must say that was quite the performance." The group gathered, exhausted but relieved. "Let's hope we never have to do that again," Jax muttered, brushing off some lingering static from his fur. As the circus settled back into its usual rhythm, the performers couldn't help but wonder if the storm had been a glitch in the system, or if it was just another one of Kane's unpredictable games. Either way, life in the amazing digital circus would never be boring. The digital trap. What happens when you lose yourself in a world that isn't real? At what point do we stop being present in our real lives? In a sprawling city, illuminated by neon lights and holographic advertisements, there was a place known only by whispers: the digital circus. This wasn't a circus with acrobats or clowns. It was a virtual experience, a labyrinth of alternate realities where people could become anything, anyone. Inside, you could defy gravity, breathe underwater, even fly with wings made of light. It was the ultimate escape from a mundane, monotonous life. People flocked to the digital circus for different reasons. Some were bored of their day-to-day existence. Some sought adventure, others a respite from pain. Once inside, time became fluid. Hours felt like minutes, and reality felt like a fading dream. For Oliver, the allure of the digital circus had been too strong to resist. A software engineer by day, his real world had become a series of lines of code and routines that suffocated him. He longed for something more, a place where he could be free, where creativity had no limits, and where he could leave his worries behind. When he first entered the digital circus, it was everything he had dreamed of. His avatar, a majestic figure adorned with digital armor, roamed through fantastical cities in the sky, danced with fire beneath stars, and explored oceans filled with creatures that glowed in a kaleidoscope of colors. He could be whoever he wanted, go wherever his imagination led. But as the days passed, Oliver began to notice something strange. The longer he stayed inside, the more distant his memories of the real world became. Faces of people he knew blurred in his mind, and the echo of their voices grew fainter. It wasn't just Oliver either. He noticed other users, avatars wandering aimlessly, their eyes hollow, their movements slow as if they had forgotten why they had come in the first place. One day, Oliver stumbled upon a hidden area within the digital circus, a part of the virtual world that was never mentioned in any of the forums or guides. The space was a vast, empty field, covered in fog. In the center stood an ancient-looking carousel, with its horses frozen in time, their eyes glowing faintly. It felt eerie, out of place. As he approached, an old, weathered figure appeared beside the carousel. A ringmaster, dressed in digital tattered clothes, but with a presence that felt almost real. "You're lost, aren't you?" the ringmaster asked, his voice a blend of static and familiarity. Oliver hesitated. "No, I'm not lost. I'm just exploring." The ringmaster smiled, but it was a sad, knowing smile. That's what they all say at first. But the digital circus has a way of consuming more than just your time. It takes pieces of you. How long have you been here? Do you remember? Oliver thought for a moment but couldn't answer. Days? Weeks? He wasn't sure anymore. The longer you stay, the more you forget who you were. The circus isn't just a game. It's a trap. A digital prison for those who seek too much escape. People think they come here to find themselves, but they end up losing everything that makes them real. Oliver felt a cold chill. He had always believed the digital circus was just a harmless fantasy, a playground for the mind. But as he stood there, he realized that the line between fantasy and reality had blurred. The more he escaped into the circus, the more he became disconnected from the world outside, from his own life. "You can still leave," the ringmaster continued, "but you need to make a choice. Do you want to live in a world that's real, or a world that only feels real?" Oliver looked around at the carousel, the fog, the endless digital landscape stretching beyond him. It was beautiful, enchanting, and limitless. But it was also hollow. The circus offered wonders, but at the cost of his soul. He made his decision. Logging out felt like waking from a deep sleep. When Oliver removed his headset, he blinked at the sunlight pouring through his window. His apartment was quiet, and for the first time in a long while, he could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. The real world felt slow, grounded, and imperfect, but it was his. It was a place where his memories mattered, where his relationships were real, and where his time had meaning. The digital circus would always be there, waiting for him to return. But Oliver knew better now. Sometimes the most important journey was not the one into fantasy, but the one back to reality. Pomni's disappearing act. Pomni sat on a quiet ledge of the digital circus, staring off into the endless, surreal landscape that stretched before her. The twisting, looping roads, the carnival tents that swayed as if alive, and the sky, a constant shifting of colors that never settled, were all a part of the chaos that was now her reality. But for Pomni, no matter how long she had been here, she could never quite adjust. The bizarre nature of the circus weighed on her, and every day felt like a new challenge to her sanity. "Pomni!" Ragatha's voice broke through the quiet, drawing her out of her thoughts. She turned to see Ragatha waving at her, motioning her over to where the others were gathered near the main tent. "Come on! We're about to start a new game. Something Jax came up with." Pomni hesitated. The thought of Jax's games usually sent a chill down her spine. They often involved pranks or challenges that left the others frustrated or worse. But there was nothing else to do, and she figured it would be better than staying in her own thoughts. She hopped down and jogged over to the group. Jax was, unsurprisingly, grinning from ear to ear. "Ah, Pomni, glad you could make it," he said, flashing his usual smug grin. "I've got something special cooked up today. It's a classic, hide and seek, but with a twist." Zubul groaned. "What's the twist this time, Jax? We all know you're going to make it impossible, or just annoying." Jax's grin widened. "Oh, ye of little faith. It's nothing too crazy, I swear. Just a bit of an extra challenge. You hide, and if I don't find you in 5 minutes, you win." "That doesn't sound too bad," Kinger muttered, rubbing his chin suspiciously. "But what's the catch?" "No catch," Jax said, his hands up in mock surrender. "Just good old hide and seek. Though, the place you hide might be a bit unpredictable." Pomni glanced around at the others. Ragatha seemed cautious, Zubul skeptical, and Kinger his usual jittery self. But despite their reservations, they all agreed to play. The rules were simple. They had 5 minutes to hide anywhere in the circus, and Jax would have 10 minutes to find them. If he failed, they won. But knowing Jax, Pomni had a sinking feeling that it wouldn't be as straightforward as he was making it sound. "Ready? Set! Go!" Jax called out, turning his back to give them time to hide. Pomni sprinted into the circus grounds, weaving between the various odd attractions and structures. She wasn't sure where to hide. Everything in the digital circus was so open, so exposed. Then, as she passed by one of the lesser-used tents, she spotted a small trapdoor hidden in the shadow of the tent's side. "Perfect," she whispered to herself, quickly opening the trapdoor and slipping inside. The hidden space. The trapdoor led her into a small, dimly lit chamber. It was strange. It didn't look like it was part of the circus at all. The walls were covered in intricate, glowing symbols that shifted and changed as she watched them. The air felt different here, heavier, as if something was pressing down on her. Pomni shivered, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was a great hiding spot. Jax would never find her down here. She crouched in the corner, waiting for the game to unfold. Minutes passed in silence. The only sound was the faint humming of the glowing symbols on the walls. She tried to focus, to keep her mind on the game, but something about the space unsettled her. It was as if the walls were alive, shifting and breathing in time with her own breath. Then, without warning, the trapdoor above her slammed shut. Pomni jumped, her heart racing. What the? She rushed to the door and tried to pull it open, but it wouldn't budgie. It was sealed teat, as if it had never been there at all. Panic started to rise in her chest. "Okay, Pomni, don't freak out," she whispered to herself, tugging at the door again. "It's just a trick, probably something Jax set up." But deep down, she knew this wasn't one of Jax's pranks. Something was wrong. The room began to change. The symbols on the walls brightened, pulsing with an eerie light. The air grew even heavier, and Pomni felt a strange sensation, like the room was shrinking, closing in on her. She took a step back, her heart pounding in her ears. Suddenly, the symbols on the walls shifted, forming into words she could understand. "You are disappearing." Pomni's blood ran cold. What? What does that mean? She looked down at her hands and gasped. Her fingers were fading, becoming translucent, as if she were slowly turning into mist. "No, no, no!" she cried, frantically waving her hands in the air, but they only grew fainter. Her legs, her arms, her entire body was vanishing piece by piece. "Help!" Pomni screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the heavy air. She ran to the walls, pounding on them, but they felt insubstantial, like she was hitting air. The words on the walls pulsed again. "You are becoming part of the circus." Pomni's mind raced. Becoming part of the circus? Was this what had happened to the others before her? Had they been swallowed by the digital circus, lost forever in its bizarre, shifting reality? Her body was nearly gone now, only a faint outline of herself remaining. Tears filled her eyes as she realized there was no escape. She was disappearing, just like the symbols had said. But then, just as she was about to fade completely, the trapdoor above her burst open. Ragatha's voice called out, frantic, "Pomni, are you in here?" Pomni tried to shout, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Ragatha, I'm here." Ragatha's head appeared through the trapdoor, her eyes wide with horror. "Pomni, hang on!" She reached down, grabbing for Pomni's fading form. For a moment, their hands touched, and Pomni felt a spark of hope. But then Ragatha's hand passed right through her, as if she were nothing but air. "No, no, no, no!" Ragatha cried, her eyes filling with tears. Pomni felt herself slipping further, the world around her dissolving into mist. But in her final moments, she looked up at Ragatha and managed a weak smile. Tell the others," she whispered. "Don't let the circus take them, too." And then, with a final flicker, Pomni disappeared, leaving nothing behind but a faint shimmer of light. The aftermath. Ragatha sat by the open trapdoor, staring down into the empty space where Pomni had just been. Her hands trembled as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Jax, Zubul, and Kinger appeared behind her, their faces full of confusion and concern. "Ragatha?" Zubul asked cautiously. "Where's Pomni?" Ragatha shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "She's gone." Jax frowned, looking down into the hole. "Gone? What do you mean, gone? She can't just be gone." "I don't know how to explain it," Ragatha said, her voice cracking. "She disappeared. The circus. It took her." The group fell into a stunned silence, the weight of her words sinking in. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke. The circus had always been strange, full of tricks and games, but this was something far darker. Pomni had vanished, consumed by the circus itself, and now, more than ever, They realized how dangerous their reality truly was. The digital circus was not just a bizarre world, it was a trap, and they were all in danger of becoming part of it, just like Pomni. As the group slowly left the tent, Ragatha glanced back one last time at the spot where Pomni had vanished. She swallowed hard, her heart heavy with guilt and fear. "We need to be more careful," she whispered to herself. "The circus is watching and waiting." And with that, the Hall of Mirrors stood silently behind them, its secrets locked away, waiting for the next to fall into its trap. The Clockwork Labyrinth. Pomni sat alone on one of the circus benches, staring up at the vast, swirling sky. It was another strange day in the digital circus, and although she was used to the never-ending oddities, today felt different. She couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. The vibrant colors of the circus almost seemed to dull, and a cold wind blew through the tent flaps, chilling her to the bone. "Pomni, come on. We've got something interesting over here," Ragatha called from across the grounds. She stood with Kinger and Zubul, pointing toward one of the older, more dilapidated tents near the edge of the circus. Pomni got up and hurried over, curiosity piqued. As she approached, she saw that the tent was not one she'd noticed before. Its faded canvas was torn and covered in strange mechanical gears that clicked and whirred quietly. At the entrance, a large rusty clock hung, its hands spinning wildly in opposite directions. "What is this place?" Pomni asked, feeling a sense of unease. "No idea," Zubul replied with a shrug, "but it looks new. Well, new to us anyway." Kinger muttered something under his breath, his eyes wide with suspicion. This doesn't feel right. We should leave it alone." But before anyone could respond, Jack strolled up behind them, a wide grin on his face. "What's wrong? Scared of a little clock?" he teased, pushing past them and into the tent without hesitation. "Jax, wait!" Ragatha called, but it was too late. The moment Jax crossed the threshold, the tent gears began to grind louder, and the clock at the entrance stopped spinning. The tent flap fluttered shut behind him. Pomni's heart skipped a beat. What just happened? Without thinking, she stepped forward and reached for the flap. But as soon as her fingers brushed the fabric, the world seemed to shift. The ground beneath her feet gave way, and she felt herself falling. Down, down, down into darkness. The clockwork maze. When Pomni opened her eyes, she was no longer in the circus. Instead, she stood in the middle of a massive, mechanical labyrinth. Towering walls of metal and brass surrounded her, the air thick with the scent of oil and machinery. The gears and cogs that made up the walls clicked rhythmically, the sound echoing through the maze like a heartbeat. She wasn't alone. Ragatha, Zubul, and Kinger were there too, looking just as disoriented. "What is this place?" Ragatha asked, her voice shaky. "I think we've fallen into some kind of trap," Pomni muttered. "But where's Jax?" As if in answer, a loud clang rang out, followed by Jax's unmistakable voice. "Over here, losers!" They followed the sound through the twisting corridors, eventually finding Jax leaning casually against one of the walls, smirking. "Took you long enough." "Do you even know where we are?" Ragatha demanded, her hands on her hips. Jax shrugged. "Not a clue, but I've got a feeling there's a way out somewhere." Pomni glanced around, her stomach churning. "We need to stick together. This place, it feels alive." As they began to explore, they quickly realized the labyrinth was not just a maze. It was a puzzle. Some paths would open and close on their own, gears grinding loudly as walls shifted. Other corridors seemed to stretch on forever, looping back on themselves in impossible ways. Kinger was growing increasingly frantic, muttering to himself about traps and conspiracies. Zubul seemed calm, but kept a wary eye on the ever-changing environment. Regatha tried to keep everyone focused, but the constant shifting of the maze was wearing on her too. Then, they encountered their first real obstacle, a large room filled with mechanical platforms, each one rotating at different speeds. Suspended above the platforms was a glowing orb, pulsing with energy. "Looks like we need that," Jack said, pointing to the orb. "Probably opens the next door." "Great," Zubul muttered. "Another game." Pomni stepped forward, eyeing the platforms carefully. "We'll have to jump across." One by one, they leaped onto the platforms, timing their jumps with the rotations. Regatha was the first to reach the orb, grabbing it just as one of the platforms spun too quickly beneath her. She lost her footing, but before she could fall, Pomni reached out and pulled her to safety. With the orb in hand, the door at the far end of the room creaked open, revealing yet another twisting corridor. One step closer, Pomni muttered under her breath. The heart of the maze. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the maze became more complex. The walls hummed with energy, and the gears turned faster, almost as if the entire structure was speeding up. Jax, usually so confident, started to seem uneasy, though he hid it behind his usual sarcasm. "Anybody else feel like this place is trying to eat us?" Zubul muttered, ducking as a low-hanging gear spun dangerously close to her head. "It's definitely not friendly," Ragatha agreed. Then they reached the heart of the labyrinth. It was a massive circular chamber, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. In the center stood a giant, ancient clock, its face cracked and its hands frozen at midnight. Surrounding it were intricate gears and cogs, each one connected to the clock, ticking slowly, as if counting down to something. At the base of the clock was an inscription, written in a language none of them recognized. But as Pomni stared at it, the letters seemed to shift, rearranging themselves into words she could understand. "To leave, you must turn back time." "Turn back time?" Pomni whispered, her brow furrowing. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. The clock's hands began to move, ticking backward at an alarming speed. The maze outside the chamber groaned and shifted, the walls folding in on themselves as the entire structure began to collapse. "We need to get out of here," Kinger yelled, panic setting in. "But how?" Ragatha asked, her eyes wide. Pomni looked up at the clock, horsey, her mind racing. "We have to stop the clock. Turn it back." Without waiting for a response, she sprinted toward the base of the clock, searching for a way to interact with it. The others followed, but the room was falling apart around them. Gears crashed down from above, and the walls of the chamber began to cave in. Jack spotted a lever near the base of the clock and pulled it with all his strength. The clock's hands slowed, but only for a moment before speeding up again. "It's not working," Jax growled. "Together," Pomni shouted. "We all have to pull." One by one, they each grabbed hold of the lever, pulling it with all their might. The clock resisted, but slowly, its hands began to move backward, ticking more slowly until, finally, they stopped at exactly midnight. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a deafening clang, the clock's face shattered, and the labyrinth collapsed entirely, sending them all tumbling into darkness. Return to the circus. When Pomni opened her eyes again, she was back in the circus, lying on the ground near the same old tent. The others were there too, groaning as they sat up, disoriented. Did we make it out?" Ragatha asked, looking around in disbelief. Pomni nodded, her body still aching from the fall. "I think so." The tent that had swallowed them was gone, replaced by the familiar chaos of the digital circus. But something had changed. Pomni could feel it. The maze, the clock. It had been real, but they had beaten it. They had turned back time. Jack stood up, dusting himself off. "Well, That was fun. Let's never do that again. Pomni chuckled, despite the exhaustion weighing her down. Agreed. But as they walked back toward the main part of the circus, Pomni glanced over her shoulder. The gears of the clockwork maze were gone, but the feeling that something had shifted remained. For now, they were safe. But the digital circus was full of mysteries, and she knew it wouldn't be long before they faced another challenge, one even more dangerous than the last. Jax's new toy. It had been a quiet day in the digital circus. Well, as quiet as it could get, considering the ever-shifting landscape and bizarre antics of its inhabitants. Jax was bored, which meant trouble for everyone else. He was wandering aimlessly when he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Tucked away behind a particularly garish stall was a small, nondescript door. Jax grinned. A hidden room? That sounded like fun. Without hesitation, he opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, filled with strange mechanical gadgets and gizmos. In the center of the room, on a dusty pedestal, sat a small, ornate box. Jax's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Ooh, what do we have here?" he muttered to himself, picking up the box. It was intricately designed, with strange symbols etched into its surface. There was a keyhole, but no key in sight. "Well, well, well," Jax chuckled. "I bet this does something interesting." He shook the box a little, but nothing happened. Then he tried prying it open, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, Jax slammed the box against the pedestal. Suddenly, the symbols on the box glowed, and with a soft click, it opened. A cloud of green mist poured out, swirling around Jax before dispersing into the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Jax blinked, waiting for some grand explosion or magical effect. But everything remained still. Lame, he muttered, tossing the box aside. As he turned to leave, he heard a soft, eerie giggle. Jax froze. The giggle grew louder, echoing through the room. He spun around, but there was no one there. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Okay, who's messing with me?" Jax called out, eyes narrowing. The giggle turned into full-blown laughter, sinister and mocking. Jax backed away, suddenly uneasy. He bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind him. But the laughter followed him. The puzzle cube. Kane had set up a new challenge in the digital circus, a massive puzzle cube that floated ominously in the center of the grounds. It had hundreds of moving parts, and the challenge was simple. Solve it to win a prize. The problem? No one had any idea how it worked. "All right, who's ready for the cube of conundrums?" Kane asked, floating excitedly above the puzzle. Jax rolled his eyes. "It's just a big block of nonsense. You're really running out of ideas, aren't you?" "Oh, ye of little faith!" Kane twirled in midair. "This is more than just a block. It's a test of wit, strategy, and patience." Pomni, always eager to escape the madness of the circus, stepped up. "I'll give it a shot." Ragatha nodded in support. "We'll figure it out together." As the two approached the cube, they noticed its surface shifting and changing. Symbols lit up and faded, while panels moved of their own accord. Kane watched with glee as Pomni hesitantly placed her hand on the puzzle. The cube immediately responded, rotating faster and faster. Pomni jumped back. "What did I do?" Jax, watching from a distance, chuckled. "Nice going." Suddenly, the cube split into several smaller cubes, each floating around the digital circus. "Oh dear," Kane said, rubbing his hands together. "Now it's really a puzzle." "Great," Pomni muttered, chasing after one of the floating cubes. For hours, Pomni and Ragatha tried to catch the moving pieces, only for them to dodge and weave out of reach. Jax, of course, sat on the sidelines, amused by their struggle. Finally, Pomni managed to grab hold of one of the pieces. As soon as she did, the rest of the cubes zoomed back, reassembling themselves into the original cube. The puzzle flashed once and then fell silent. "I did it?" Pomni asked, confused. Cain floated down, a sly grin on his face. "Well, sort of. The real challenge was letting the cube come to you. But don't worry, you still win." Pomni sighed, too tired to question it. "I don't even want to know what the prize is." With a snap of his fingers, Cain conjured a small digital pet, a floating, blinking ball of light. "Enjoy!" Jax burst out laughing. "All that work for a glowing ping-pong ball?" Pomni groaned. "Just another day in the circus, I guess."